I am happy to report that after months and months of generational astrology, just major shit popping off, we are entering a moment of relative calm. The astrology of June 2026 is honestly pretty chill. Yes, there are some things happening, and yes, we're gearing up to a bigger story that's unfolding in July and August. But for now, June is giving us the kind of summer, chill, relaxed vibes that I know we all need after the absolute gauntlet that 2026 has put us through so far. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Dana Solara. I'm an astrologer and spiritual coach, and I specialize in self-reclamation, which is the process of coming back home to yourself, reconnecting with your soul, and embodying your purpose. For me, astrology forecasts are less about telling you what's going to happen and more about giving you information about the context. Really, what the forecast tells us is the energetic conditions that we're about to be moving through. And it doesn't take away our free will. In fact, having this information shouldn't limit you at all. It should empower you to make conscious choices given what's going on and how the energy might be supporting your intentions, activating you, frustrating you, whatever the case may be. So I think to start, I want to actually show you what we're looking at for the month of June. I've got my Cosmic Witch Astrology Almanac here up on the screen. This is a Notion template that I built with all of the transits for the year. And I'm showing you this right now because I want you to just see the difference in the sheer amount of shit going on between June and May. So I'm actually going to go back to May right now. And now take a look. If you're listening to this, I'll just tell you, there is so much happening. Even if I were to remove the retrogrades, which are kind of adding more to this picture that we're looking at. I mean, if you look at the week of May 17th, the 17th, 18th, and 19th each have 3 transits happening. Now, they're not all, a big deal, but Mercury conjunct Uranus, Mars entering Taurus, Venus entering Cancer, Mercury square the nodes. Like, things just kept happening. And this was piled onto the fact that February, March, April were really pivotal months. Astrologically speaking, we had the outer planets ingressing into their new signs. We had eclipses. I mean, it was just an onslaught of astrology, which I'm talking about it like it's a bad thing. It's really neither good nor bad, right? It just is what it is. But when there is so much going on, I feel pretty busy, loud, like boop, 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 boop. There's just a lot happening and a lot in our field. And that can feel like a lot, right? It can kind of feel like a lot. Now that we're moving into June, we're nearing the summer solstice. We're nearing the midpoint of the year. How has the astrology of this year shown up for you? Like if you think back to December when you were maybe watching year ahead forecasts, getting a sense of what 2026 is going to be like, what were you thinking then about what might happen, what has happened, and what's changed? Like this is a really good time to reflect, especially while our astrological landscape is a little more chill, which now that we're looking at June, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see that there's much less happening, right? In fact, like the second week, which obviously we're going to get into the details of the astrology of the month, but there's really only like a couple of transits to speak of each week. Whereas last month in May, I had to like distill the transits down to themes with certain planets because it was just too much to talk about all of it. So we don't have that problem this month, which is good. And we have some really beautiful things happening and we have some challenging things happening, which is always the case, right? So with that, I want to go ahead and put the actual chart up on the screen and we're going to take it week by week this month, okay? Because like I said, there isn't quite as much to deal with as there was in May. And I'm just going to kind of talk you through week by week, okay? As you have questions, drop them in the comments. I definitely want to answer your guys' questions and make sure you feel confident about everything we're talking about here. So we are taking a look at June 2026. The first week of June, Mercury is going to enter Cancer, okay? And so you can see Mercury here at 0 degrees, Cancer. Co-present with the benefics. It is a benefic party in Cancer right now. Venus and Jupiter are here. June is our last month of an exalted Jupiter in Cancer until 12 more years. When it comes to working with the transits, it's really about doing what you can do and leaving the rest to your destiny. I think that it's a great idea to take action on something you've been thinking about doing, especially if it pertains to the house topics that Cancer activates for you. So, in this chart, it's Sag rising, and we have Cancer in the 8th house. So I'm thinking about shared assets here. If you are partnered with someone and you own a house together, if there's any kind of joint partnership project or fear that you've been wanting to face, thinking about 8th house topics, it's not a bad idea to do it in June, right? I think it's a good idea to do the things that you've been wanting to do. But I also say that it's not like these next 30 days are your last chance, right? So if you're like me, for example, at Libra rising, and you've got Cancer in your 10th house, I don't want you to think that you have to wait another 12 years before you're lucky in career, because there's so much more going on with your chart at any given moment that's just never going to be the whole story. So in other words, don't let there be any scarcity around the fact that this is the last month of Jupiter in Cancer. Just embrace the fact that there is some beautiful ease happening here, especially in the first part of the month when Venus and Jupiter are co-present. Mercury being here simply says, maybe your conversations are a little bit easier. Maybe there's some information that comes through, maybe a memory. I'm thinking about Cancer being sort of ancestral, that is really sweet, really soothing, really brings us together. There's some shared idea of how things should work, how we should get along, and it makes things feel pretty easy, which is really beautiful and nice and helpful. Now, of course, this is all contingent on your birth chart, right? We're speaking generally for the collective, but you always want to take what I'm saying and apply it to the house topics that are activated by your chart. Now, there is one little thing here, and it's not a little thing, but Mercury's moving fast-ish and will, in a couple of days, square Neptune. So I need to change my time. Hold on. Let's do 1 day. So Mercury's going to square Neptune around June 3rd. And, it's not great for precision. It's not great for clear thinking. It is probably good for poetry, good for minimizing the critical faculty, which could be a good or a bad thing. Sometimes that's not great. We don't want to move into delusional territory, but it is pretty quick, so I don't really see that happening. Neptune can also be about deceit. So maybe not a great day to buy a car, sign a contract of any kind. You could just avoid that day for those kinds of things, but otherwise, this is pretty quick. And that's about all there is to say about the first week of June. So that takes us to the next week, which growing up, I watched local news in the morning, and on the weather segment, they would always talk about the peach of the week, like the best day of the week. The peach of the month, for sure, is Jupiter and Venus conjoining in Cancer. So it's exact on June 9th at 2:59 p.m. Central Time. And this is just beautiful. I mean, we've got an exalted Jupiter, which exaltation is one of the different ways we can speak to dignity, how strong a planet is in a given zodiac sign. And when a planet's exalted, it's lifted up, just like the name suggests. It's not Jupiter's home sign, but it does well here. And so Jupiter being exalted here speaks to the fact that it can do what it wants to do with relative ease. It's helped, it's supported. Venus is the second benefic. Benefics are helpers. They are planets that bring ease and flow. And this, to me, is just a really beautiful moment of coming together, of joy, of feeling like you belong, like there's a real celebratory nature to this, and things just work out. However, and I hate to say this and rain on the parade, but Saturn is kind of in the mix here, not just because Saturn is in an overcoming square. It's kind of got the upper hand in this whole sign square between Aries and Cancer, but also because Saturn and Mercury are squaring as well. So you can see it's within arc minutes of being exact during the moment of this conjunction between Jupiter and Venus. So squares are like Mars. They create friction. They are aggressive. They can just make things more challenging. And when we're talking about Mercury, we're talking about communication, ideas, precision, detail, analysis, critical thinking, buying, selling, merchants, and things of that sort. And then we think about Saturn, the Debbie Downer of the zodiac. Not that that's all there is to Saturn, but we know Saturn is also in fall here in Aries, which means it's the opposite of exaltation. So if a planet is lifted up when it's exalted, a planet has fallen down when it's in fall. I always talk about the Life Alert commercials from the 90s. Help, I've fallen and I can't get up. So Saturn struggles to do what Saturn wants to do here. It's like there's two different plot lines happening at the same time. Jupiter and Venus are giving us this moment of celebration, of excitement, of winning, and being recognized maybe for our contributions. Like, people are giving us our flowers. That's what I get from this. And we might be doing the same for other people. It's just like a really feel-good moment. Whereas this square is saying something like, very critical, like it's a big no for me. I don't see your side of things. It's not making sense to me. And I'm thinking a lot about Saturn being indicative of endings and death. So with that in mind, it gives sort of a new paradigm. And I don't think it's going to be that deep because it's quick, but it's like the way that I used to think about this doesn't make sense anymore. There's a change in the way that I'm understanding something, the way that I'm putting the pieces together. That's Mercury. And the way that I was doing it doesn't work anymore. It's died, quote unquote. It's run its course. And so I have to change the way that I'm seeing this. So there might be some situation that presents itself around this time that just requires us to have a bit of a reframe. And it might be a little confrontational. It doesn't mean we're going to be confronted by someone else, but it could be that. And it could be more of an inner confrontation situation. So June 9th, overall, this is about as good as it gets, right? Venus and Jupiter conjoined in Cancer in terms of auspicious and helpful astrology. The square, it does bring a little bit of a dampening effect, but we're still going to have a great day around June 9th, okay? Now, on June 12th, Mercury is going to enter its pre-retrograde shadow. It'll go retrograde at the end of the month, and I'll talk more about that when we get to the end of the month. But just know the 12th is the start of that pre-retrograde shadow. And then on the 13th, Venus will enter Leo. Now, this is interesting because as planets enter Leo, they're going to dance a little bit with the outer planets. Okay, so they are going to trine Neptune, sextile Uranus, and oppose Pluto. And then once they get a little further in, they'll also square Saturn. This is important to know now because, yes, Venus is going to be doing this dance this month, but when Jupiter moves into Leo, then Jupiter will be doing this dance. And in July, the big story is the outer planets all being configured to one another. So we'll talk more about that when we get there. But for now, just know that Venus is going to be a little busy while she's in Leo. And I almost forgot to mention something really important, that as planets leave Cancer and enter Leo, they will also square Chiron. Okay, now, depending on where in the zodiac they're going to square is going to depend on the timing, because you can see Chiron at that very end degrees of Aries here. As of June 13th, it's at 29 degrees, 45 arc minutes. It will move into Taurus by the end of the month, which means that planets will square Chiron when they enter Leo. And so when Venus squares Chiron, it's going to be between Aries and Cancer. And so it's something to note as Venus leaves Cancer, especially around June 12th. Is there a disagreement of some kind? Is there a situation where you're trying to be diplomatic, but you also want to get what you want? That's definitely Venus squaring a planet in Aries for me. So be mindful, of those disagreements should they arise. If you're noticing any kind of difficulty navigating discussions around who gets what, what's fair, what's important to us in this moment, and disagreements over that, it makes sense that might be happening, and see what you can do to arrive at that middle ground, as hard as it may feel. That was actually something I was thinking about as well when I was thinking about Saturn and Mercury squaring, that it might be hard to find a middle ground. We might feel really stubborn. We might feel like we're not being heard and no one's listening, and that might be really frustrating. That's that energy of a square creating friction. So I think all week, like there's the Jupiter and Venus of it all that's like everything's clicking, it's just working out. People see what I'm doing, they appreciate me, they see me deeply. And then there's also this other beat of like, we're not vibing, we're not getting along, you don't get it, I'm not backing down. And so it's a bit of a both and this second week of June. And we're just going to try our best to embrace it all, because that's the whole point of studying astrology and knowing the forecast, right? Is the ability to be present for all of it and develop acceptance where there once was fear and resistance. So that is what we're going to try to do. Okay. So that takes us into week 3, where we have a little more to talk about. And the first thing we need to talk about is the new moon. The new moon in Gemini happening on June 14th. We already know Venus is doing a dance with the outer planets around this time. She is approaching her trine to Neptune. That's definitely flavoring this new moon. Uranus is also squaring the nodes at this time, approaching its exact square with the north and the south node. So a couple of things to say about this. I've been getting into the decans lately, which are these 10-degree chunks of each zodiac sign that have a planetary ruler, but also correspond to the tarot. And the tarot card for the last decan, the last 10 degrees of Gemini, is the 10 of Swords. If you're familiar with the tarot, you probably are like, ooh, I don't know about that, because the 10 of Swords is kind of a gnarly card. I'll put it on the screen if you've never seen it before. It's a man or a person laying face down in this dark, desolate-looking scene with 10 swords in their back. In the tarot, swords represent the element of air, which is about thinking, thoughts, and communication. And it can really speak to the mental anguish that can occur from having an overactive mind, that we can actually cause ourselves to suffer much more than is necessary. And so this new moon, I think, can give us an opportunity to untangle some of that. And that becomes even more interesting and pertinent, I think, when we consider Uranus's role, not just being co-present with the new moon, but also squaring the nodes. Nodes are points of fate. They are a key part of the eclipses. And so anytime the nodes are involved in a transit, there's some kind of fateful event, fateful turning point. And Uranus, we know, is a liberator. It is all about insights and downloads and breaking free and revolution. So I think that we can become really objective about our thoughts at this time and kind of untangling the knot of anxiety that we can create through our own fear. We can kind of get some space from that maybe with this new moon to say, is that true? It's that thing of don't believe everything you think. I think we have greater access and ability to separate ourselves from our thoughts, to recognize that not everything we think is true, and to therefore pull the swords out of our own back. And so that's the new moon in Gemini happening on the 14th. There's a couple of other things happening this week. Venus is going to sextile Uranus on the 15th, trine Neptune on the 16th, and oppose Pluto on the 17th. So that is kind of playing into this lunar cycle as well, because Venus is just getting ready to move into those aspects with those outer planets and kind of adding an interesting nuance to this lunar cycle as a whole, that we're getting a taste of this outer planet story that we're going to experience in much more, a more pronounced way in July. Now, I did mention Chiron. Chiron is going to enter Taurus for a little while. It's going to retrograde back out later in the year, but it will enter Taurus as of June 19th. So you can see that right here. This is a big shift because Chiron has been in Aries for quite some time, for several years, and it's now going to shift from healing wounds around individuality and your sense of I am and your drive and what you want to do. Now we're moving into healing around embodiment, around the physical body, around the physical earth. And we know that a healing process requires a little bit of pain first, right? It's a little graphic, but if you have an image of like a wound that's, fresh, somebody might pour hydrogen peroxide and you see it all kind of bubble up. And that's the healing process. It's a little gnarly at first, but it's for our own good. And so I do suggest around the 19th and 20th and just the last 10 days of June, notice if any kind of Chiron Taurus themes seem to be coming up for you, especially in terms of the house topics that Taurus activates in your chart. So for example, in this chart, we're looking at Capricorn rising, which puts Taurus in the 5th house. That would be your pleasure, your hobbies, what you do for fun and entertainment, your children. Is there anything that's immediately popping up in those last 10 days of June that gives you a clue about what this transit might be asking you to work through? And remember that Chiron is also a teacher. So it's also about offering the wisdom that we've gained through our own hardships. And so just something to keep in mind as we keep moving through the rest of the month. Now on the 20th, that square between Uranus and the nodes will be exact. So it's already in the engagement range, very much so in the new moon and even before that, but it's exact on the 20th. So this is kind of a loud transit. We might be feeling the call to really pivot at this time. So the house topics that Gemini indicates for you mid-month through like the, 25th, I would really say like June 10th through 30th, most of the month, this is active. And especially around the 15th and 20th, just pay attention to where you're wanting to change course, especially as it pertains to the house topics indicated by Gemini in your chart. So again, this chart, Capricorn rising, puts Gemini in the 6th house. That would be about work. It would be about your daily routine, your daily grind, the things you do that are hard but necessary, taking care of your body, your health. You might realize there's a new way to do things. And because the nodes are in your 3rd and your 9th in this chart, that you're learning something new that's changing the way you work, or you're going on some kind of learning adventure about health that's changing the way you take care of your body, right? So you want to think about the house topics that are implicated by both the nodes and Uranus and just be a little more present and aware for what is coming up around this time and what you're feeling ready to make a change about. So this takes us to the 21st. Happy summer solstice. You know what I love about this is as the sun enters Cancer, it's going to sextile Chiron newly moved into Taurus. And the first thing I thought about this, knowing that it's Father's Day, is like, number one, really beautiful day for a connection that heals. Like I had envisioned someone at a family reunion where it's like very 4 of Wands. We just feel welcomed. We feel loved. We feel like we belong here. And it's very healing and soothing. But I also think it's a beautiful day for inner child work. So if you are a person who does not have a good relationship with the father figure or figures in your life, or it's complicated for you, or maybe they're no longer with us, this would be a beautiful, beautiful day to reparent and to give yourself and your inner child what you need and want in this moment. So beautiful day for healing work. And I highly recommend it, especially as Mercury also approaches a conjunction with Jupiter as well. The next day, the sun is going to trine the north node in Pisces and sextile the south node in Virgo. It does feel like a supportive growth edge, like there's something that we're able to do. We have the push to do it. It's like the wind is at our, what's the expression? The wind at your back. Like it's just working a little bit for us to kind of take the next step on something. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is speaking to the Uranus node situation that was bubbling and growing in intensity earlier in the month. And then that takes us to the 25th, where the sun is going to square Neptune. This is another great day for poetry and not a great day for signing contracts. And I would also say, don't force clarity if it's not coming. I think this is just a good day to kind of take it easy, like maybe relax a little bit on the couch. Don't try to get a whole lot done because you may just be kind of it's a head in your clouds kind of transit for me. Venus will be trining Saturn. We know trines are like Jupiter. They cohere, they bring things together, they make a big picture more legible, like easier to understand. We just kind of see how things are supposed to work. And it also can grow something. And so there's a way in which we're taking our pleasure seriously, maybe at this time. And I'm also thinking about the notion of tending, like whatever is challenging about Saturn right now, whatever challenges Saturn is indicating for you right now, there's some help that comes through, whether that's in the form of another person or simply in your own disposition to like show up in love and with love. I think that there's something helpful for us in our Saturn challenges, our ongoing Saturn challenges here. And now this takes us to the last few days of the month. Mars is going to enter Gemini on June 28th. And can I just say, good. Like there are no bad placements, right? They're all here to teach us something. But as a Venus person, as a Libra rising, I struggle with Mars and Taurus. So on a personal note, I am very happy Mars will be moving into Gemini, but check this out. Immediately upon entering, Mars is going to be in that engagement range with Uranus. And that is loud, okay? That is like, I'm blowing it all up. I'm cutting the cords completely. Like, there's this movie, and I can't remember. Tell me in the comments if you know it. It's one of those doofy early 2000s comedies, I think, where it's like, fuck you, you're cool, fuck you. And that's what I get from this. Like, we are not pulling any punches and we're just cutting the cords completely. So, it might be hard to have some restraint around the end of the month. Maybe it's not the time for restraint. Maybe the circumstances are what's really being indicated here, that we need to cut and run in some way. And I don't want that to sound scary because it may not be dramatic. You might just be like, you know what? I'm done here. And you're ready to move on and do something different. And so that kind of energy of I'm ready to just be done with this is very much present at the end of the month and building. And it's a good idea to just be more present of impulsive feelings and just give yourself a beat before really going for it. The following day, the 29th, we have a full moon in Capricorn at around 8 degrees. And when I looked at the decan for the first 10 degrees of Capricorn, it's the Two of Pentacles, which is the guy who's balancing the coins. Jupiter is at the last degree of Cancer here and is going to, on the 30th, move into Leo, which means it's going to also move into a square with Chiron. And all of this together gives me a sense of like we're juggling a lot right now. Of course, the Two of Pentacles, the guy is literally juggling, but I think about there being too much on our plate with Jupiter square Chiron. Like Jupiter's ability to grow and expand something is not always a benefic experience, right? Like Jupiter's always a benefic, but you can have a lot of responsibilities and that can be a little stressful, right? So I got the feeling of like having too much on your plate, that we might be stressing out and that this might be kind of a stressful time where we're trying to really juggle a lot. And if we think about the moon in Capricorn, the moon wants to feel safe, nurtured. It wants to express and emote and feel our feelings. It wants to feel things. And Capricorn, Saturn sign, is cold. And it's, the sign of the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere. And the moon is really quickly going to be moving into a square with Saturn here. Now, we know, as I keep saying, Saturn's in fall, which means there's not a whole lot of help for the moon at this point in time. And what that tells me is our emotions might be on a high level right now. We might be really kind of struggling emotionally because we're dealing with a lot of responsibilities. So it's an important time for us to ask for help when we need it, to reach out, and if nothing else, to be honest with ourselves, right? If we need help with all of the stuff that we're juggling, we should ask. We need to speak up and advocate for ourselves, but if there's no one to ask, if you have no one to come in to help you, to tag team in with you, at least be real with yourself. At least give yourself the space and time you need as you can to just be real. I think the worst thing we could do with this kind of energy is just try to ignore any kind of underlying emotional experience that's going on. Maybe we don't have the space and energy to deal with the feelings immediately, but in our, quiet time and our spiritual self-reflection, for me, that's in the morning, first thing in the morning, get honest with yourself about it. And that, I think, will really help to mitigate any resentment that could pop up, because certainly when we ignore our feelings, we can start feeling kind of angry and resentful. And then a situation that could have been avoided by simply attending to our feelings becomes much harder and really evolves into something that it never needed to become. So take the time to check in with yourself around the end of the month and be honest with yourself about how you're feeling. And if and when you can, ask for help. Definitely not a bad idea to have a therapy appointment booked in advance, just in case. Now, interestingly, and you might have noticed this, Mercury is going to station retrograde the same day as this full moon. So we are rethinking something. And that's another layer to this full moon as well. And of course, this is going to go on for a couple of weeks. It's going to station direct July 23rd. So most of July, we're going to have Mercury retrograde, but it's kind of poignant that it's happening at the same time, right around the same time, rather, as the full moon. I think that it just says that we're going to be kind of understanding, and it tells me we're going to be refining our understanding of something. And I think it's interesting that the retrograde is happening in Cancer because, as we can see, Jupiter's about to leave Cancer. So it's like we're making meaning of what has happened in the Cancer part of our charts. We're stitching together a story. We're picking up the pieces of what got left behind or we didn't notice before as it was all happening. We're saying, all right, here's how all this comes together. So I'm kind of excited for this Mercury retrograde. I think it's going to be a nice refinement process where we can get a clearer, better understanding of what has happened so we can move forward in a more aligned fashion. And then the finale of the month is Jupiter enters Leo on June 30th. This is a big deal. I think I'm going to do a totally different episode on this, honestly, because there's way more to say about this than, I don't want to turn the next 20 minutes into Jupiter and Leo. So I think I'll say more about this definitely in July because of Jupiter's connection to all the outer planets, but maybe on its own as well. Did mention Jupiter's going to square Chiron immediately as when it enters Leo. So I don't want you to feel worried if on the 29th and 30th, things are a little rocky. If you're like, oh God, is this what Jupiter and Leo is going to be like? No. Remember we just talked about that full moon being a little tricky and being a little like, ooh, ouch, I'm in my feelings and I feel kind of alone in my experience. There could be a way in which when Jupiter squares Chiron that we're able to understand the lesson of that pretty quickly, actually. And it may not feel good to understand it, but there is some kind of treasure in that process. There's some kind of wisdom that we can glean and keep from that. And so it's a quick thing. And I don't want you to worry about all of Jupiter and Leo being ouchy like that, right? But for now, we'll just say that Jupiter's already in the engagement range of trining. I guess technically it's not because it's at 0 and Neptune's at 4 degrees here. But for all intents and purposes, Jupiter's moving into a trine with Neptune right away. And I think I'll leave you with this and we'll talk more about it in a different episode, that we are going to have some really grand plans. Like we are going to be ready to go out on the world stage and share our thinking. I say thinking because Jupiter is the philosopher. Jupiter understands how it all works together. And I think there's some kind of message for some reason that we really just want to get out. There's some grand vision that we want to execute and we are raring to go. I mean, Jupiter in a fire sign is like, I think of the Great Awakening and proselytizing and like, I'm going out and I'm going to all these towns and I'm going to share the good word, whatever that good word might be. And so look for that as Jupiter enters Leo. the people who are on the stage, what are they saying? What are they preaching? You can be a preacher without being religious, right? Like, look out for people preaching around this time. And I'll get deeper into this, I think, in a special Jupiter in Leo episode. So that's the month, and I'm excited for it. I'm excited for the relative calm. I'm excited to decompress from the school year that just ended, and I'm excited to hear how it lands for you. So leave your questions in the comments. Let me know if there's anything that I can clarify. Let me know what you want me to make new videos about so that we can keep this channel as fun and engaging as possible. If you haven't already, subscribe. I'd love to have you come back next week. In the meantime, I hope you have a beautiful weekend. I'm sending you all the best, and I'll see you next time. Bye. I'm going to interrupt the forecast really quick to tell you, if you love my astrology breakdowns, you are not going to want to miss my free workshop on June 8th called the Soul Searcher's Map. As you know, I specialize in self-reclamation, which is all about coming back home to yourself and living in your purpose. I've noticed over the years in my personal experience and as an astrologer that when people are trying to find their purpose, they're trying to connect with it and live an aligned, meaningful life, that they come to astrology, but they don't really know how astrology can actually help them. They listen to forecasts. I want to take a quick break from the forecast to formally invite you to my free workshop on June 8th, the Soul Searcher's Map. If you've ever identified as a soul searcher, and I imagine as a lover of astrology, you probably do, you might have found out that soul searching can actually become a bit of a hamster wheel, that you can get stuck seeking and searching and learning and digesting information without it actually making a meaningful difference in your life. And what I found is there are actually 5 steps that we all take that are in a cycle of spiritual growth and development, that if we follow them and if we strategically weave astrology into each of these 5 steps, that we can have a map back home to ourselves that will always help us stay connected and calibrated to our inner compass. That's what I'm teaching in the Soul Searcher's Map. So if you love astrology, if you love personal growth, if you want to feel more deeply connected to your path and purpose, you are not going to want to miss this free workshop. You can sign up at danasolara.com/map.